My kids were told they couldn't sit with the wedding party because they don't match the color theme. I smiled, guided them to a corner table, and said nothing. After the first dance, I took back the envelope I'd hidden under the cake stand. 20 minutes later, my mom was yelling in the parking lot, "What did you do?" I turned around, showed her the torn check, and without thinking twice, dropped it in the trash. And then, I knew I wasn't wanted at the wedding the second I pulled up. My brother Kyle barely looked at me when I got out of the car, like I was the wrong Uber drop-off. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since I got the keys to the Honda I bought secondhand and a little cash I'd been saving from shifts at the diner. 3,000 in cash that nobody knew about, not even my mother. They all hated me for leaving home the way I did. No announcements, no explanations. One day I was in that cramped house, and the next I was gone. I didn't even tell Kyle, which made his grudge worse. Especially after I didn't offer to help pay for his wedding like he probably expected me to. But I had my own reasons, and it wasn't just spite. I wasn't going to come at all, but my cousin Andrea guilted me into it. She said if I didn't show, it would just confirm what they all thought, that I was selfish and bitter. So I came. I wore a plain blue dress, nothing flashy. I wasn't trying to stand out. But the minute my kids and I stepped inside the reception hall, I knew it was a mistake. Someone in Kyle's circle, his new wife's sister I think, walked up with this pinched smile and told me there'd been a change of plans. She said my kids couldn't sit at the guest tables because they didn't match the color scheme. That was the phrase she used. The color scheme. I asked her what the hell that even meant, but she waved me off like I was causing a scene. I could feel eyes on me, some of my family pretending not to notice, others shaking their heads. I smiled, didn't argue. I took my kids by the hands and found a small table near the kitchen doors. They were confused, but I just told them it was like a secret spot, a special table. They didn't need to see me humiliated. That was when I noticed the envelope under the cake stand. I wasn't supposed to see it, but the baker had dropped off the cake and left it exposed for a few minutes before the decorator came back. The envelope was thick, not sealed. I didn't know what was in it, not yet. But I slid it into my bag when nobody was looking. Just in case. The night dragged on, cheap wine, terrible speeches. But I stayed. I waited until after the first dance. That was when I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and opened the envelope. Cash. Stacks of it. Mostly hundreds. There had to be at least 10 grand in there, maybe more. I didn't hesitate. I took half, stuffed it into my bra, then tore the receipt that had been folded up inside and kept it. I slid the rest back into the envelope, sealed it up, and slid it back under the cake stand before anyone noticed. 20 minutes later, my mother found me by the side entrance. She was already yelling before she got to me. "What did you do?" I turned, held up the torn receipt, and tossed it into the trash. And then she grabbed my arm and tried to pull me around the side of the building like I was a child again. But I didn't move. I just stared at her. She was hissing under her breath about how I was going to ruin everything, that Kyle was already suspicious because someone saw me near the cake. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. She could see it in my face that I wasn't bluffing. She kept saying the same thing over and over, how I couldn't just show up and steal from my own family. But she didn't say it like she was angry about the theft itself. It was the fact that it was me doing it. I walked away from her, back inside. I didn't even check on my kids. I knew where they were and that they were fine. I went straight to the dance floor, where Kyle was standing with his new wife and some of his friends, drunk and loud. I knew if I waited, I'd lose the nerve. So I just said it, loud enough for the music to cut awkwardly around us. I asked him how much he paid for the wedding photographer. He laughed it off until I told him I'd seen the receipt. That got his attention. His new wife was glaring at me, and Kyle was trying to play it off, but I could see him doing math in his head. Because that receipt I tore up? It wasn't just for the photographer. It was an entire package deal. Photos, video, live streaming for the relatives who couldn't attend. 20 grand, paid up front in cash. I told him someone should probably make sure the envelope was still under the cake stand. The room got quiet. Someone, I think my aunt, went running toward the cake. I stayed right where I was, watching Kyle, watching his wife's expression change from annoyance to straight panic. It took less than 2 minutes for my aunt to come back yelling that the envelope was still there, but it looked tampered with. That's when Kyle came at me, tried to shove me, asking what I did. His wife was right behind him, screaming about calling the cops. I just stood there and smiled, because I still had half the cash on me and they couldn't prove a thing. But then my mother, from behind me, whispered something that made my stomach drop. She said Kyle was going to check the cameras. That's when I remembered the little dome cameras in the hall corners. I needed to move. Fast. I didn't wait for them to finish screaming. I walked straight to the kitchen doors, past the servers who barely noticed me, and out through the back exit where the dumpsters were. My car was parked a little further down the alley, not in the main lot. I knew better. But when I got there, the car wasn't alone. Andrea was standing next to it, arms crossed, like she'd been waiting. I hadn't seen her slip away, but of course she noticed. She always noticed. She asked if I did it, if I really took the cash. I didn't say yes, didn't say no. She wasn't mad though. That's the thing. She just smiled and said good for me. I was about to unlock the door when she stopped me and asked if I knew what the money was actually for. I told her it was the photographer and she shook her head. She said that was the lie Kyle told everyone, but the cash was really a payoff for something else. She said Kyle had gotten himself into trouble. Something about a car accident a few months back that he paid someone to keep quiet. The photographer thing was a cover story so no one would ask why so much cash was moving around. I didn't believe her, not entirely, but I knew Andrea didn't make things up. Then she asked me what I was planning to do with it. I told her it was none of her business and she laughed. She said it was her business now because she was the one who knew where the cameras were pointed, and where they weren't. She said the cameras couldn't see the corner table by the kitchen. I was about to tell her to back off when she offered a deal. Split the money I took, and she'd tell me exactly how to get out without them pinning it on me. I didn't trust her. But she was the only one not treating me like garbage. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. It was just one sentence. Cops are on the way. I didn't have time to think. Andrea was already walking toward the side street, telling me to follow if I wanted to keep the cash and my freedom. I got in the car and followed her. We drove for 20 minutes in silence, away from the city, until she pulled into a motel parking lot. She got out, came to my window, and said if I stayed quiet and waited, she'd make sure I walked away clean. Then she disappeared into one of the rooms. I just sat there, cash still stuffed in my bra, kids still back at the reception, and no clue what she was doing inside that motel. 10 minutes later, my brother was blowing up my phone. The text said, "You have no idea what you've done." I didn't respond. I was still watching that motel door, waiting for Andrea to come out. She didn't. Not yet. I waited another 20 minutes before getting out of the car. The parking lot was empty except for a pickup and some beat-up sedan. The motel itself looked half abandoned, only a few lights in the windows. I knocked on the door Andrea went into. Nothing. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. I was about to leave when the door cracked open and some guy peeked out. Mid-40s, thinning hair, heavy eyes like he hadn't slept in days. He asked what I wanted. I told him I was looking for Andrea. He looked me up and down, then stepped aside. Said she was in the back. I stepped in, already regretting it. The room reeked of old smoke and mildew. There was a sliding door to the bathroom, slightly ajar. He pointed there. I opened it slowly. Andrea was sitting on the floor by the tub, back against the tile, staring at her phone. She didn't even look up when she said Kyle was on his way. That stopped me. I asked her what the hell she meant. She finally looked up and said Kyle had a backup plan for the cash, and she'd texted him as soon as she saw me take the envelope. She wanted her cut either way. I didn't even have time to yell. My phone lit up again. Kyle calling. Andrea told me not to answer. She said if I wanted to walk away clean, I had to give her my half of the cash and disappear. Otherwise, Kyle was going to make sure the cops got involved, and once that happened, my kids were going to be sitting in foster care before I could blink. I told her to screw herself. I wasn't giving her a dime. She laughed, said I should check the time. I looked, almost midnight. She said the cameras at the venue recorded over themselves every night at 12. If I waited another 20 minutes, the footage would be gone. But if I stayed in that room, Kyle would get there first, and it wouldn't matter if the footage was gone. I left. Ran back to my car, locked the doors, started the engine. I was pulling out when I saw headlights at the end of the lot. Big headlights. Kyle's truck. I gunned it, peeled out, didn't care about the noise. My phone was still ringing when I hit the road, but I didn't answer. I drove straight back to the reception hall. It was almost empty now, just staff clearing up. My kids were sitting right where I left them, half asleep. I grabbed them, got them in the car, and drove off just as my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "We're not done. You'll pay for this. ****. I kept driving. I had the cash, my kids, and the keys to the Honda. I didn't know where I was going yet. But I wasn't about to let it end like that. Not yet. I drove for hours. Didn't stop until I hit the next state. My kids slept in the back seat, oblivious. I pulled into a gas station just before sunrise, parked under the dead fluorescent lights, and finally exhaled. I counted the cash. A little over 5 grand. I thought I grabbed half, but clearly I didn't. Either way, it was enough for now. But I couldn't shake that text. We're not done. I didn't know if it was Kyle, my mother, or Andrea. Any of them were capable of it. I got a cheap motel room off the highway and stayed there a few days, trying to figure out my next move. I couldn't call anyone I knew, couldn't post anything online. I paid for everything in cash. On the third night, I noticed a car sitting across the street from the motel. Grey SUV, engine running, windows tinted. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I looked out the window, the SUV was still there. In the morning it was gone, but I knew what it meant. Kyle had found me. So I did the only thing I could think of. I called my old friend Claire, someone I hadn't spoken to in years but who owed me a favor. She answered, groggy and suspicious, but when she heard my voice she told me where she lived now, 2 towns over. I packed up the kids, the cash, and drove. Claire lived in this dusty old trailer on the edge of nowhere, but it was safe. She let me crash in her spare room, didn't ask too many questions. That night, she told me something that changed everything. She said she saw Kyle's name pop up on the news not long ago. Some local article about a guy under investigation for insurance fraud. Something about staged accidents and fake claims. It clicked instantly. That cash wasn't just a payoff. It was hush money to someone who had dirt on him, maybe someone involved in the fraud. And now that money was missing, which meant Kyle's entire scam was exposed if the wrong person didn't get paid. Claire said if I was smart, I'd disappear for good. Change my name, take the cash and run. But I couldn't do that. Because now I knew I had more leverage than I thought. And Kyle? He had more to lose than just a wedding. I wasn't done either. Part 6. I stayed at Claire's for 2 more nights, thinking. I knew running forever wasn't an option, not with kids. Claire offered to help, even suggested someone who could get me fake papers if I wanted to vanish completely. But I had a better idea. I told Claire I needed a laptop. She brought me an old one she barely used, and I spent hours digging. I remembered the name of the company Kyle claimed to work with when he was consulting, some vague insurance outfit. It didn't take long to find mentions of lawsuits and investigations tied to them. Fraud, racketeering, staged accidents, all of it. I gathered every link, every document, every article. Then I recorded a video of myself explaining everything. What I took, why I took it, what I knew. I said I had the receipt, the cash, and enough info to make it public if anything happened to me or my kids. I uploaded it all to a cloud account with scheduled release. Unless I logged in every 72 hours, it would send to a list of reporters I picked out. Then I sent Kyle a message from a burner account. I know about the fraud. I know what the cash was for. I have a dead man's switch. Touch me or my kids, and it all goes public. Asterisk asterisk. There was no reply, not for hours. Then finally, you don't know who you're messing with. That told me everything I needed to know. He was scared, but not enough. I knew him. Pride always got in his way. A day later, Claire saw another car idling by her trailer. I didn't wait. I packed up, left cash for Claire, and took the kids further north. Small towns. Cash motels. Then, one morning, I got a final message from Kyle. You win. Don't come back. Asterisk asterisk. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I still had the cash, still had the receipt, still had the dead man's switch. It wasn't the ending I imagined, but it was enough. My family despised me, my brother wanted me gone, but I walked away with my kids, my life, and the satisfaction that Kyle would spend the rest of his days wondering when the hammer might drop. It wasn't forgiveness. It was better. It was revenge.